Hey everybody, it's Eric alongside Rod with our Indiana pregame show sponsored by Fanduel Sportsbook. Your go-to source for betting on the sports you love to watch. Whether it's a parlay or you just want to stick to the money line, you'll find all the odds you need at the Fanduel app. Easy to download, you can get started right away. Head on over to vote on our Fanduel player of the game at slido.com. Hashtag TIFNuts, that's SLIDO.com. Hashtag TFFINOTS. Very big thanks to Adam Rock for his support to the show via Venmo. His message was from Bruce and his granddaughter Grace. I certainly missed seeing by Bruce at the games, but the Lower Bowl is actually pretty nice. Maybe someday I can meet Grace, who I think lives in North Carolina. Thanks, guys. Maybe she can hang out with my granddaughter someday. If you want to support the show, be like Bruce and visit our support page at tffinots.com/support to get the necessary links. Remember that if you sign up to be a Patreon or Substack supporter, you can get an ad-free audio version of the show and sometimes some sneak peeks when it gets released a little before. Okay, Rod. Michigan State completes its swing through the state of Indiana on Sunday with a visit to Historic Assembly Hall in Bloomington, Indiana, to go for the sweep of the Hoosiers. After its win at Mackey, Michigan State really could make some serious hay by knocking off Indiana, which Bracket Dom still has listed as a quad 1A opportunity for the green and white. That obviously can change with things as they juggle around, as we saw with Ohio State, where they had no quad 1 wins, and then Indiana loses to Northwestern at home, and suddenly Northwestern was a quad 1 win by Ohio State. But anyway, a win there would, I think, probably firmly keep the Spartans on the 3C line, give them travel preferences for the first 2 rounds. So it's a very important game. It's certainly one that after you just won at Mackey, you don't want to just sort of give that away.
Right. 100%. It's not validation so much in terms of what Michigan State's potential is. We know that. That's been demonstrated several times this year, right? But it would be validation in 2 other important senses. One, the most important in my mind, is that it would demonstrate pretty clearly that Michigan State has turned a corner or it would appear so, in terms of the consistency of its play to win a road game against a team that may not make the tournament but may make it. And that means it's of a certain quality. We're not talking about a juggernaut, but anytime you're talking about a team that potentially could make the field, winning a game in their building matters. That's why the committee values road victories,
Right.
which it does in a number of different ways, including, as you just alluded to, the fact that against a team that is fairly mediocre by quote-unquote good team standards would still be a quad 1A win on the road. That tells you how much it matters. The other way, which matters as well, but is a little less important to me, but not of no importance, is what you're talking about in terms of seed implications.
Mm-hmm.
I do think if you're Michigan State, there probably is. I've been reluctant to believe that there's a massive gulf between 1s and 2s. And that's honestly the position I take most years.
Uh-huh.
And most years I'm proven right in the end, because we don't typically have what we had last year where we had 4 1 seeds make the Final Four, right?
Right.
But I think all else considered, you'd probably rather, at least marginally, be looking at playing the 2 seeds that are likely to be out there in a Sweet 16 game as opposed to the 1s. So I can buy it, I guess, to that extent. And the way you ensure that would be your road is by remaining at least on the 3 line. Now, we're assuming that the bracketologists have this right. I think they do. That it makes sense to me when I look at the the various resumes that Michigan State would currently be a 3. But we don't know for sure. So we do have to say that, obviously, that we're assuming
Right. Sure.
that this is the position Michigan State is in, and thus a win in this game would help solidify it. I would also say this, though. My feeling would be, just because of the games that are out there that have to be played other than Michigan State's, if Michigan State wins this one and they win against Rutgers, I kind of feel like the Michigan game might not matter. You
Yeah, it
know,
would only matter maybe to make it to a 2, but you probably are stuck on a
but
3
then
either
but
way.
then what is it? Yeah,
It
that
just
might
changes your first round opponent, really. I mean, right?
change your
It's a
first
little
round
bit easier.
opponent. Change your first round opponent. Although again, the difference between a 15 and a 14,
Yeah.
really. Uh, the area that it might matter, I guess, would be where Michigan State gets placed. That could be impacted. But we don't know. We see years where a team might remain a 3, but they still end up with a favorable geographic draw. So, you
Right.
know, we'll have to see. But that's why I put all of that stuff as much as it matters of secondary import, because to me the biggest deal this time of year, and I think it's safe to say the biggest deal to Tom Izzo for sure, is how is your team playing? And I don't know if we said this the other night. If we didn't, I want to make sure I say it now, because I actually had this thought late in that game when Purdue had cut it to 2,
Yep.
and you knew there was a chance they were going to pull it out. And I honestly did. I mean this. I honestly did think to myself, even if they lose this, it's not going to bother me that much because they've done what I wanted to see them do, which is play well in this kind of environment on the road against a very good opponent. And that's ultimately what really matters at this time of year. It's how you play. The results, yes, they matter, but they're of secondary importance for the moment, because what you're really trying to do is make sure you're playing your best basketball at the point that the results don't just matter, but are everything. You win or your season's over,
Yeah.
And Michigan State had accomplished that regardless of how the last possession went.
Right. No, I agree. I was feeling the same way that they had played better and they looked like they could do some stuff. But I think it's obviously important to win that game. But the
Sure,
fact that they
yeah, I
controlled
don't
that
mean to
second
take
half as well as they did I think was what impressed me more than anything, that they just kind of had that working margin of basically 2 possessions until the very, very end. So
Yeah, and I don't mean to say, oh, a loss is fine, but you want to win for
well, yeah,
sure.
of course.
But you understand my point. It's the bigger, the more significant thing, the thing of bigger importance in this at this time of year is just simply how are you playing. So, for example, let's look at this game, or even more to the point, the Rutgers game next week at home.
Uh-huh.
If Michigan State wins, but they don't play well, if it's kind of another Ohio State, let's say, you're not going to feel great.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Or like the Rutgers the first time they played them.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. You play a game like that, you're not going to feel super about where you're at. So it's the quality of performance. We're down to that because Michigan State has done enough good work that they've put themselves in a position where it's the wins and losses. Yes, if they lose games other than Michigan, will it hurt what we're talking about in terms of their seeding? Probably a little bit, but they're not in danger of missing the field. So wins aren't mission critical
Right.
at this point.
Yeah.
So it really is about quality of play, in my opinion, above and beyond everything else.
Well, and to your point, I think for a couple of shows ago, we were talking about when it comes to matchups, and we'll get into this more obviously as we get closer to the tournament, but it's going to be matchups that's going to be more dependent on sort of how Michigan State plays. And so to your point, whether it's a 15, 14, 13 seed, or
Yep.
you're playing a 7 seed the second round, or you're playing a 6 seed the second round, it's really going to depend on what that team is, who they
100%.
are. Right. Yeah.
100%. If you're facing a team whose strength is, let's say, on the interior, which I guess is less common for likely first round opponent where MSU
Sure.
is, that's preferable, because I look at it, I think, well, Michigan State's very well equipped to play that. If you're facing a team that's got 2 really dynamic, really good guards who score, can handle, can kind of do everything offensively, that's going to be more challenging for MSU. So yeah, how the NCAA thing works out is, in my opinion, is going to be very much dependent upon who you're playing, what the quality of team, the profile that an individual team has.
Yeah. And And obviously, too, the final thing is that, Michigan State, there's a minuscule outside chance they could have a play for the Big Ten title. Obviously, Michigan put that to bed as they just had the dominant performance in Champaign and destroyed Illinois. And so they're outright champion. And it probably is going to be the fourth year in a row we've had now a team win the Big Ten by over 3 games. I mean, it's pretty remarkable to have sort of one dominant team like that.
The spread is currently 3 games over Michigan State and Nebraska, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It is. I was talking last night to our show of the friend of the show, Jack Ebling. And we were talking about the Big Ten regular season title being devalued a little bit, which it has to be to some extent, simply because, and we're not novel in talking about this by any means, all the single plays. So it's who you play twice,
Right.
which you look at it this year, Michigan State having to play Michigan. If Michigan's good, Michigan State gets dealt a bad hand.
Right. And vice versa.
Right. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Indiana and Purdue, if those teams are both good, they're dealt a bad hand. Not many teams in the league have that.
Right.
But who you play in double plays matters. Who you play at home versus who you play on the road in single plays matters. And so you can make an argument and say, yeah, it's probably schedule determined as much as anything else. And I've heard Tom Izzo say that, and he's right. But at the same time, it's at least been 4 years, because the 2 straight Purdue wins, Michigan State's and now Michigan's, we've been in situations where schedule be damned, it's not really close. Like, you definitively know that season, hey, you can talk about who they played, who they didn't play, where they played them, all that. Doesn't matter. That team proved they're clear-cut the best in the league. And so that is, for as much as we think, oh, it's been changed and it's things other than results on the court that might be dictating it, hadn't been the case in the Big Ten. Not recently, at least. There have been years. I mean, the classic is, in my mind, is 2016, where somehow Michigan State didn't win it because of scheduling, and Indiana won the Big Ten regular season title. It was a joke. Everybody knew Michigan State was clear-cut a better team than Indiana. It wasn't close, but Indiana won it because of the schedule. But that's rare. That's been rare recently, at least.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, as you point out, Michigan, statistically, by every measure, I mean, one of the top teams in the country, and obviously going to be a 1 seed.
One of the 3 best teams in the country. There's no doubt about that. But I was having this discussion, and I want to actually talk about this for a minute. It's going to derail us, but it's our show.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's just me and the places I frequent on the internet, which probably is a good sign to get off the internet as much as anything. But
good life advice.
I have been very surprised over the last 24-ish hours by the kind of talk that I've seen from a lot of Michigan State fans. Because you would think, you just come off the first time beating Purdue in 12 years. You finally play a game where unquestionably you say that's a good performance. That's the kind of performance that a team that makes a deep run can makes. All of those things, which are all absolutely true. And yet I detected this, what I refer to as, and I'm going to date myself here because it's a reference to a very mediocre second-rate cartoon strip that some here I think will be familiar with. I call it sad sacking. Yeah. It's just depressive, miserablest, a focus on, well, Michigan State can't win a championship, meaning a national championship, I guess.
Yeah.
With this, and even bleeding into pessimism about next year, which is wild to me. Yeah. Absolutely wild. We're not even in March of 26. You're worried about March of 27, but I've detected this again, I'm not saying it affects the whole fan base, thank God, but that there's a significant enough segment, larger than it should be, that's had this reaction after a win like that. And I rack my brain and say, why is this the case? And the only thing I can come up with is it's that Michigan having a really good year just messes with people's psyches like you would not believe.
For sure.
That has to be it. Because objectively looking at what Michigan State, which is what you ought to be worried about, is doing, doesn't seem to matter.
No, I think you're 100%. If this is Wisconsin, that is 18-1 or 17-1. I don't think people have as much problem with Michigan State's season. They're very excited.
We know they don't, because we've seen.
Look, right, we've seen it
most of the time over the last 30 years. Michigan has not really been a factor. There have been the odd years where they have been, like under John Beilein. Last year, for a while, they were, but that's been the exception, not the rule. Much more regularly, it's been teams like Wisconsin, Purdue, Ohio State for a long stretch. And I think it's absolutely right. That's crazy to me. Look, I'm right with everybody that wants to see that team. If they're tipping off against a University of Hell, pitchforks up. I get it. I'm right there with you on that. But Jesus Christ, have some perspective. What you ought to be most concerned about is what Michigan State is doing, and allow yourself to be objective as much as possible about that. And the fact is, objectively, Michigan State is yet again having a very good season on balance. Look at what we're talking about. We're talking about, can they get to a 2? They seem like they're pretty solid in the 3, on the 3 line. That's impressive. That's a good season, folks, no matter what program you're at. And I also find myself, I go back once again, and I'm going to take credit for it, because I came up with the title of this show. That was my idea. It's Tom Izzo's line, but it was my idea to use it. And in moments like this, I feel like absolutely made the right choice, because it ought to be, anybody who comes across us ought to be getting a reminder every time they see it of what it means. The idea that there are people walking around in this fan base who are championship or bust, and can take this mentality that, well, you're having a good season, but I'm sick of good seasons. I want championships. Shove it up your, seriously. It's just a complete, utter loss of perspective. And I've said this many times. When this particular ride is over, meaning the guy in charge is not here anymore, you're going to find out what it all really means, no matter who takes that job. And I hope that all that means is, hey, it's just slightly less consistent than it used to be. I'm praying for that.
Right.
Because that's the good result. You're going to find out.
I mean, look at Alabama in football, right? I mean, Saban leaves.
Yeah, there you go.
They're mortal. I mean,
and
they're good.
They hired a guy who I think most people would have felt objectively was a great hire and probably as good a coach as they could have possibly gotten. I mean, that guy had just been to had he been to the no, he hadn't been to the national. Had he been to the national championship, or he been to the
Washington? No, I don't think so.
He'd been to the Final Four.
Yeah.
DeBoer had been to the semifinals. So he was as hot a name as there could be. And again, it's not like the results have been awful.
No.
They just haven't been what Nick Saban did.
Yep.
And they're going to find out. I mean, if the idea that they're going to find someone who produces results, the level of consistency that Nick Saban did, no chance. No chance. Not happening.
Yeah.
It's really been jarring to me. Again, it's one thing if you're reading that after the Ohio State loss. I still think it's dopey, but I get it a little more. But to see it at this moment, crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy. And I honestly, and people can do whatever the hell they want, I guess, but I don't understand it. I don't understand going through life with a mentality like that. I really don't. Like, I don't know how you wake up and it seems trivial. Well, you're talking about college basketball. Who the hell cares really when push comes to shove? But seriously, it's if you approach something that's supposed to be fun in your life and this is how you react, get help. Anyway, I'm done.
So we'll have everybody get off their couch. The therapy session is done. We're going to continue talking about Indiana here. We'll talk about their season. And as you mentioned before, it is interesting because this will be the second double play that Michigan.
Yeah.
Or actually, this is the first double play that Michigan State will have completed. The next two, of course, are all double plays.
Made it a lot faster for me putting this preview together. I'll tell you.
Yeah,
that.
right. For sure. And it is. You definitely
don't get that
luxury
very often.
Yes, from a work standpoint,
but I will from here on out though, because these are all double plays.
You can just kind of mail it in now.
Yeah,
last two. But it is fun doing these second, the revenge games. Really, like I think it was Jess Settles I listened to a broadcast. He's talking about that you just don't get that anymore in the Big Ten.
Yep.
It's
or,
you didn't play well or something went wrong. Some guy got in foul trouble, and you're like, well, that's not going to happen again. I mean, you miss those things, and so it's that. We can complain about the past, I guess, or the future.
It's a bit, it's, I mean,
nothing to do about
real quickly to riff on that. Yes, ultimately that's true. There's nothing that can be done. We're in a new era and that's that. But it really is. And this gets back to the regular season title and is it devalued kind of talk. But there's, let's just be honest about it. And I'm going to say truthfully, it's been this way since Penn State got admitted, which is 30 whatever years ago.
It's been that long. I guess it has. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the early 90s.
Getting old.
The old Big Ten, where it was a true round robin, you played everybody twice.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
Yeah,
because you really did. There was no arguing with a team winning it under those circumstances. It just wasn't possible
for sure.
Because you played everybody in their building, you got everybody in yours, and that's it. And as Jeff Settles is talking about, you would see that play out. It's like, well, we went to their building and we got snake bit by the refs, or they hit a miracle shot, whatever, we didn't play well, whatever it was. Now we get a chance to get them back. And you're missing that. So this is a rare thing that we're going to see over these next 3 games.
I will say too, as somebody goes to the Big Ten tournament every year, and I realize it's not like super important, the Big Ten tournament, but it's fun. It's a little bit less fun just because I'm just less familiar with the players. Like even before the 4 Pac-12 teams joined, you saw most teams twice, not all of them. And so it's a lot easier to have familiarity with the opposing players. And so now it's like, oh yeah, we played, Minnesota, and I kind of remember their players. If you don't watch, and there's just so much more Big Ten basketball to consume, it's just hard to keep up with sort of everything. And so anyway, it's just one of the things you can sort of lose, but that's the way of the world. And for sure, the one thing I can be certain of is that it will continue to be different in the future going forward. Who knows what will be next? So as I mentioned, Indiana, 19-9. They're 8-9 in the Big Ten. So they've sort of had a little bit of swoon here recently. They're ranked 43rd in KenPom, 39th in the net. So they are in the bubble, as I talked to Dom last night in our live session.
So he has them
the first team out. And the third team out is Ohio State.
Yeah. So that's actually worth noting just for a second here, because you and I had this conversation with Jack actually last night. Right now, I think he's got the Big Ten with 8.
Correct.
Projected in. That's a light number.
It is.
For a league but I'm not arguing with him. I think he's probably right.
He usually is.
Obviously. But it really does illustrate something that I have felt has been true this year, and we've talked about it here. There was definite separation, no question.
Yeah.
Between the top 5. I think Wisconsin at times has flirted with joining that group, but hasn't. Every time they might be in that position, they take a loss. I'd say Wisconsin is kind of in their own category. And then what you have
Iowa,
Iowa
UCLA.
and UCLA kind of in like I've never felt that either of them were out of it. I think they've been solid tournament teams for quite a while now.
Yep.
But they're also clearly not of the caliber of the elite group. And then from there, you get into this handful of teams, Ohio State and Indiana being two of them. You could maybe, I think you can probably throw USC into that mix as well to some extent.
Yeah.
Where you're talking true bubble teams. What it all means is the Big Ten at the top has been really good. I don't think there's much debate about that. But the middle and the bottom end, we've seen better.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it's sorted out to me. Like now we're at a vantage point 17 games in where I think you get a pretty good sense of the pulse of this league. And that's kind of where I've landed, which is a year that's a little bit hard for people to get their arms around because the top end is so good, but depth wise, like I don't even think it's as good as last year in terms of depth.
No, I agree.
We haven't seen as many of those. Oh, a team that's in 11th rises up and beats the third place team. You know, we haven't seen a lot of that. A little, not a lot.
Yeah. I mean, Minnesota's caught some teams that
Minnesota caught Michigan State.
There
have
Indiana, I guess.
Yeah, there have been a small number of them, but not with the frequency that we're used to. I think we're more often than not, we're used to a Big Ten where that middle, at least, has dangerous teams. And like, I'm not saying Indiana can't win this game. Of course they can. But this is not, it's just not one of those years. And for Indiana and Ohio State, that's two programs that for different reasons really need to make the field.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing you say is that the Big Ten needs more teams, and we need to go to 74 teams for the NCAA tournament.
That seems to be the general mood within the NCAA and the conference commissioners, at least the big conference commissioners, right?
I don't feel like I hear the Big Ten talking about it. I feel it's the SEC is always.
Of course, it's the SEC. It's but yeah, it's well, we didn't get enough team. We got to take 80. We got to take 110. Why isn't everybody making it? I mean, that's where I know the absurdity of it. And here's the truth. No disrespect to Indiana or Ohio State, but does anybody really need to see those teams in the tournament? Have they done so much that you, and I get like saying, yeah, I'd like to see Bruce Thornton play a postseason game that meant something before his career's over. That aspect of it, I get a little bit, but not that much. Yeah. They're just, they have not demonstrated clearly that they're worthy, not to date.
Yeah, and I cannot imagine if you have a first 16 or something like that people are going to really tune in to watch. Could be wrong, but I think that you see the numbers from the first four, and they're not really, or whatever it is, they do. They're just, people just don't watch those games that much. All right, so let's talk about Indiana specifically with their offense. They're 41st overall. They are a good 2-point shooting team where they're 8th in the country. Their free throw shooting is 12th, and their turnover is 62nd. 3-point shooting has been pretty good. They're almost a little under 35% at 124th coming in for the country. And the big problem is they do not offensive rebound. They're 296 in offensive rebounding. They don't get to the line a lot despite shooting well. They're 173rd in doing that. And like a couple teams in the Big Ten, they tend to prioritize 3-point shooting. Over half their shots are from 3, which is 11th in the nation. And, as anything, that makes you a lot more volatile, as we've seen with Illinois last night against Michigan, where they couldn't hit, or Wisconsin playing Michigan State, shoots the lightouts, then they go to Columbus and they can't hit, throw it in the ocean, and they have no counter, and they're just wiped out.
Yeah, I think. Look, if you're Indiana's coaching staff, I'm sure you take issue with what I'm about to say, and you say, "Well, we built this team to be a perimeter scoring team. That's the personnel we added. That's what our roster dictates that we are. But they're 8th in the country shooting twos. So I understand the argument that, yeah, but some of that is because of how many threes they take and the attention that gathers from a defense. It creates maybe more blow by situations than they would otherwise have, blah, blah, blah. And it's also true that they have put those, just as it is for Illinois and Wisconsin, because this is the same deal with those two teams also. They shoot a ton of threes, but you drill down a little bit and you see, oh, they're actually way more efficient on twos.
Yeah.
So that I think a reasonable response to that is, why don't they take more twos? Because the thing that they take most of is the most volatile thing you can do on a basketball court. Just is. It's a fact. And I think, again, same case I would make with Illinois and Wisconsin, although Indiana is not as good as either of those teams, but the same general thing applies. They are a solid offensive team that probably has been held back by their lack of balance offensively. In other words, I think they could have been better if they were less three happy and they just played with a little more balance, because you said it and it's 100% true. The variability that playing that way produces with your team is jarring to watch. And if you want a good reason why Indiana has been unable to be consistent, that's a good place to start, in my opinion. And I don't understand it. I really don't. It blows my mind, actually, that, and this isn't about Indiana so much, but somebody like Greg Gard has chosen to go that way, because Greg Gard has come up in a system, in a program that he was an assistant for a long time, where they absolutely did not approach it that way. Wisconsin basketball was predicated on getting the best possible shot at all times. And often that meant a two. They weren't hesitant to take a three, and they had some good three-point shooting teams over the years, but it wasn't a core part of their identity the way it is now. I don't understand what some of these folks think that they're seeing in the math. I really don't, because yeah, a three is worth more than a two. I get analytically how all that pans out, but if you're in a sport where you are ultimately measured most on what you do in a single elimination tournament, that is a dicey way to live.
Yeah.
And so I don't understand. Nate Oates, I've been a critic of him for years, because I don't think he's going to need to prove that he can win the whole thing playing that way, because he's had talent that, when you look at their quote unquote talent, several years since he's been coached there, they've been right near the top. I don't think that's the case this year, but many years it has been. And they've gotten to one Final Four, but that's it. And I think it's damaging these teams, because they can't play with the versatility they need to be able to play with. And a team like Indiana, their big problem is they not only do they not have a counter punch offensively, meaning they don't seem to be able to just say, you know what, we're going to look to take better shots in this game. They don't seem to have that. Neither does Illinois or Wisconsin. But unlike Illinois or Wisconsin, they don't do other things well enough to make up for at least some of that. Like, Illinois can win games against anything below the best teams if they have a shooting game like they had last night against Michigan.
Right.
They've got enough elsewhere. The frustrating thing with them is that's a team that I look at and think, man, that's a potential Final Four group, but they're not going to get there because of the way they play. In Indiana's case, the stakes are a little different. That could be an NCAA tournament team, but they may not get there because of the way they play.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I think, you look at professional sports, and their, analytics are very, very important. Baseball sort of being the, foremost among them, where, home run hitting now is, of course, valued more over someone who's batting 380 or something like that, or 375.
Well, and it's the easiest sport for deep statistical analysis to have an impact, because the vast majority of it is truly 1v1. So you don't have those team effects in the same way you do in basketball and football and hockey that muddy the waters a little bit. You know what I mean?
Sure, yeah, and I would just add that with baseball especially, but then of the other sports. So baseball, you're playing 162 games. The average of how you play over that time matters.
Yep.
If you lose and drop an individual game here or there, it doesn't make a difference. When you get to the postseason,
Yep.
yes, an individual game matters, but you're still playing a series. And so as long as you know over an average time span, and this goes for the NBA as well, you can average and say, well, we might have a bad 3-point shooting team. We're for the best 3-point shooting team in the NBA or something like that. We're going to still be able to overcome, because even if we have a bad night shooting, we're more likely not going to have a couple that are going to be good enough to get us to the next, to win a series. Whereas in a single elimination, the average of how you over the season or over 20 games or 7 games or 5 games doesn't matter as much. And so like you said, it's just risky. And so that's why I think, the analytics that come from the NBA of threes and layups, right? And that's the Nate Oates approach. And I understand the math, but to your point, when you have to win 6 in a row against 6 different teams, and you can't afford to have an off night, maybe one, if you're playing a 16 seed or something like that, if you're one, but the point is you can't afford to have that miss. And that's the problem we run into in this sort of format. And it's why you can be very successful in the regular season and then, kind of bust out in the regular or the postseason. And we see that with Michigan State, where you have a team that may not be the strongest in certain senses, but it can find different ways to be successful. That has maybe you could say on some level a little bit, although it's not, the results have not shown it. Maybe you're not quite as successful in the regular season, like say at Purdue has been, because it's a better regular season, but then the postseason you tend to have more success because you're just more versatile. Whereas like a Purdue has like one way to win, and then it works really well the regular season over the span of 20 games. But you get to the postseason and you're just more vulnerable.
I'm reminded of the old, now old Billy Beane line. Billy Beane, of course, being the longtime general manager, president of the Oakland A's, who was kind of the figure more than anybody in the sporting world to really bring analytics out of the Stone Age. And you can trace the mania that we were talking about here really directly back to him, I think.
Right. It's all been
he had a line where he said, and I quote, "My shit doesn't work in the playoffs." That's the quote. And it was true. Oakland had great regular seasons with teams that it confounded people because the talent didn't seem to be what other teams had, but yet they were consistently winning division titles and putting up, 90 plus win seasons. But they would get to the playoffs and inevitably at some point they'd get stopped. And it was because his money ball, because he's that's the term comes from those teams. Cheap players that did certain things that they valued at a high enough level, they were able to win a lot more than people thought they should. But he would inevitably, they would run into teams that just had more pure talent and were better in that kind, as we talk about postseasons in most sports. God knows, I'm hearing about it ad nauseum with people talking about the Pistons. We're like, wow, this is all cute. You're doing this in the regular season, but in the playoffs, it's a different game. And people are going to take away Cade Cunningham, and you don't have a counter to that. Well, we'll see how all that goes.
Sure.
But it is true that postseasons in pretty much every sport are a different animal. And you just went through exactly what the issue is in college basketball. It is the nature of the tournament, full stop. When you are playing single elimination style, you can't rely solely on, well, we are just the better team. If you're playing a 7-game series, 90-some% of the time. That's why, the NBA, what constitutes an upset is a 2 seed beating a 1, right? That's an upset where the team that actually had the best record doesn't win it. And that happens. But you so rarely see an 8 compared to the NCAA tournament.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
See an 8 beat a 1 or even a 4 beat a 1. That doesn't happen a lot. And it's because of the nature of the way it's structured. The more games you play, the more data points there are, right? And therefore,
Yep.
the more opportunities for the objective truth as to the quality of two teams is going to be borne out,
Yep.
right? College basketball ain't that way.
Nope.
And that's why again, part of the discussion I was having last night with somebody is, and I get it, the sad sacking comes from the fact that it's Michigan. I get it. But people, you got to work that out.
Get back on the
This
couch.
sense that some seem to have that there's an inevitability about Michigan. Newsflash, folks, there's never an inevitability about anyone in college basketball in the NCAA tournament. That is a non-starter. That doesn't mean that the best team never wins it. Of course they do sometimes. But a single game elimination setup is not one that is structured. I look, if somebody says to me Michigan's an inevitability, you know what my response to that is? I saw 1991 UNLV lose. I saw Phi Slamma lose. I saw an unbeaten Kentucky team basically 11 years ago lose. Unbeaten in the Final Four, and they didn't win it. So get out of here with that stuff. But it specifically to what we're talking about, to bring it back around to Indiana, and teams like Illinois, what have you. I think over 6, and we talked about this with Ryan Hammer, right, a few weeks ago. I'm absolutely convinced, and have been for a long time, that if you're looking for the secret sauce, as much as anything could be, in terms of why Michigan State has had so much NCAA tournament success under Tom Izzo, it is the ability to play differently in different games as needed. That is the key. When you can do that, when you can win on a night where you shoot 21% from three because you don't live and die by it, or you can win a game where you shoot a ton of threes, but you're not getting much transition, let's say, whatever it is. Or you can win a game where neither team's shooting well, and it's a brick fest. When you can do any of those things, depending upon what's required, you got a great chance to have success. When you are boxed in terms of playing one way, as this Indiana team is, and they got other problems too, but I'm focusing specifically on that. That's a tough road to me, and it's why I fundamentally do not understand these coaches choosing to do that to themselves. Particularly in Indiana's case, the roster they have,
maybe the only choice.
Get it.
Yeah,
I kind of get it. Whereas I don't with Illinois and Wisconsin. I do not get it. They both have very capable big men. They've both got good guard play. So it's not like they don't have guys who can be penetrators, or, whatever you're talking about. I don't understand it.
Yep. Well, I think about that with I do anesthesia, and of course, there's more than one or two ways to get to the desired result for successful anesthetic. If you only have one way of doing things, if that's not working for you, then you're in trouble. So you always have to have plans B through E. You may not want to use plan E, but you should always have it so that you could use it if you need it. So anyways, like you said, it's a life thing. It's not just basketball. So let's talk about the Hoosiers on defense. They've struggled more since they've gotten to conference play. Not surprisingly, with some of the teams they're going up against. They're 59th overall. They're 65th against the threes, 53rd against twos. So okay, but they don't defensively rebound very well either. Just like they didn't offensively rebound. They're 142nd in that. They also foul a lot on defense. They're 231st in opponent foul rate. So that's been sort of the thing that's been holding them back defensively.
I think it's those two things, because the shot stopping is actually a little better than I would have expected it to be, looking at their personnel, because they're not much on the interior. Physically, they're not. And I don't think that DeVries emphasized defense at all anyway, in terms of what he did in the portal, because his perimeter guys are not, they're not particularly athletic. We can go down the list of qualities they lack as a roster. But given that, Their shot stopping is not horrible. It's just when you struggle to end possessions and when you're fouling at the rate they are, that's the biggest problem. And so what does that tell you? Well, it can tell you that a team's undisciplined. That's one thing. But I really think the issue with Indiana this year is that lack of physicality and lack of athleticism shows up in that area as much as anything else. Because when you lack those elements, oftentimes you're in positions where the only choice you have is to grab somebody.
Sure. Yeah.
Know? And so there's a reason. I don't think it's that, Darren DeVries doesn't know how to coach a team to defend without fouling. I assume he's got some ideas on that front. Or their players are so undisciplined. Like the Pistons, to bring it back to the NBA for a second. The Pistons are the number one, or the worst is a better way to put it, defensive foul rate team in the NBA. They foul more than anybody. They're also the second best defense in the league. So that's something where you can look at that and say, yep, they're constantly walking the line in terms of the physicality they play with, and they get called a lot. Over the years, Michigan State had teams, not so much recently,
right,
but in the earlier stages, the earlier iterations of Izzo's MSU teams, there would be years where that was kind of the case. Their physicality resulted in them getting whistled a lot. That's not this. And they are the furthest thing from a physical team there is. It's truly out of desperation, I believe. They frequently find themselves in situations where it's the only thing they can do.
Right.
So they foul.
Yeah.
But it's a problem.
So finally, on tempo, the Hoosiers, interestingly, they were about the mid 100s in average length of possession and tempo. Now they're down in the 200s for both tempo, just overall, and then also average length of offensive possession. So they've slowed down quite a bit.
If you saw Indiana, the one game that I witnessed that really struck me in the non-conference when they played Marquette, they broke 100, and I think they might have broke 100 a few times. I'd have to go back and confirm that, but they were scoring like nobody's business in the non-conference. And truthfully, some of that was just the opponents they were playing. They weren't playing particularly strong schedule, but I want to look at this just to confirm my memory here. Yeah, so they broke, before we got to December, they had broken 100 3 times. They did it against Marquette, they did it against Milwaukee, and they did it against poor Bethune-Cookman. And then they did it again against Penn State, where they put up 113. Those days are gone. they're in the rearview mirror. And Indiana, I believe, would like to play the way they did in the non-conference. Darian DeVries would love to have them going up and down the floor and hoisting threes 5 seconds into the shot clock. I think he wants to play that way with this team. But he can't, because he's in the Big Ten. And they're just not going to allow you. But that was striking to me, because I mentioned I had notes, of course, from the previous Indiana game, which gave me a leg up in doing this one. And I was struck by how much their average length of possession and their overall tempo number has declined. I mean, it's fallen off a cliff. And it's just because you're playing teams that are better prepared and have better talent too. But I think so much of it, we always talk about this with MSU in the transition game, right? You always think, yeah, there are times they can get loose in the Big Ten, but you always go, at least I always go into a game assuming that there are pretty good odds that that's going to be limited, because the quality of the coaching, the quality of the scouting is so good, and familiarity too, that it just becomes harder to do things the way you want to do them. And I think that's true for Indiana in terms of the pace they're playing with. I don't think they're choosing this. I just think they're kind of stuck with it.
All right. So that brings us to the Fanduel interesting wagers. And I was actually thinking there might actually be a Michigan State line for tomorrow, now that we usually don't record this close, but because of the sort of the times, but I can't find at least with Bart Torvik, it looks like it's going to be sort of a pick 'em. Maybe Michigan State a 1 point favorite.
Ken Palm has MSU by 4.
By 4. Okay, so that's quite a bit different.
I'm going to be surprised if it's not at least 2 and maybe 3.
Yeah.
But again, you also have to remember the difference. The predictive metrics give us a pretty good insight into where it starts. The Vegas lines ultimately do get influenced as well by money. So
Right.
that can result
Where
in
the
some
money's moving.
shifts.
Yeah.
Right. But in kind of a neutral environment, he has them at 4. You said Torvik's got it as a push.
It's like a 0.9 or something edge for Michigan State.
Okay, so we'll say 1.
Yeah.
So
1.5 or
2.5,
something like that.
two and a
Yeah.
half.
2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I still like Michigan State, and that I think I like Michigan State on the money line, and certainly even if you give a couple points, I still like Michigan State this game.
Do we have a over under?
I'm trying to look, and I don't see it right now. Which I don't. It's surprising because I've got some games for tomorrow, but I don't see that for Michigan State. Oh, I could just, as I'm still trying to. There's so much stuff on the Fanduel app. I've got to. Yeah, I don't have anything. I'll just have some other things for them that just don't have. Oh, that's ice hockey. Hang on a second. I'll get there, folks. Just team futures is all I see for Michigan State.
Okay.
So they must not have a line yet as we're recording this Saturday morning. But again, it's probably going to be 1.5 to 2.5 points or something like that.
It'll be in that range.
I think Michigan State is. I still like that for MSU.
Oh, I would take Michigan State to cover because I think you're taking Michigan State to win. And that line's likely to be small enough. I mean, if we were talking 5, yeah, that gets a little dicier because you're on the road and look, the Purdue game was great, but you're still looking at the balance of the season. Michigan State's road performances have not been
good.
Really,
no, right.
So if you believe Purdue has fundamentally changed things, then you'd say, yeah, but the road is funny no matter how good you are. So yeah, I feel good about it. If it's in that 2.5 range, you get out to like 5, that gets a little dicier.
I do like the fact, I think that it's a quick turnaround from Thursday to Sunday. And yeah, with the minutes people are playing, maybe it's a little bit harder in Michigan State, but I like the fact that they probably haven't gone home. They probably stayed in Indiana.
They did go home.
Did they? Okay.
Home.
So,
yeah, they went home.
I guess I still like the fact that it's a quick turnaround, and I think you're going to feel pretty good, I think, going into this next game in Indiana. I think it'll carry over, as I guess my point is. Actually would feel better had they just stayed on the road together, but I understand they actually have class. I think they still do class in college basketball right now. I'm not sure. Well, and that's the one thing about that, Alabama story, Bediako. It's thank God he at least is going to be able to complete his college degree, even though he's not going to be able to play college basketball. So,
yeah, that. Thank God.
All right. So today I'm wearing
I love Jay Billis. I do, and I think he's a very bright man, extremely insightful, and I often find myself landing in his vicinity in terms of the hot button topics, but I get the argument that it doesn't do anybody any level of harm to find themselves in an educational environment. It's kind of hard to cast that as a negative,
right?
But there's also the reality of some of this stuff, and that's where it, I don't think it's a reason to try to circumvent the law and change the way we're doing things, absent statute or collective bargaining agreements, but it is pretty hollow.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and I think the argument that it's been hollow for lots of places, for a long time.
For sure.
Yeah, but
absolutely true.
Not always the case ever. So I do want to show everyone real quick my Brothers at OSU Gutters sweatshirt hoodie.
Wow.
Pretty cool. I got that. So if you're watching YouTube, you got to see. I got that from one of the brothers, obviously, from Kurt over on the west side of the state. So if you need your brothers taken care of, if you need your gutters taken care of by the brothers, head on over to our support page at tffinots.com/support. There you can find links to get a hold of Kurt or Greg, depending where you are in the state of Michigan. They'll hook you up. They'll get their guys out. They'll take care of those gutters, whether it's your home or your business. They'll make sure they're functioning properly. And I can't tell you how nice it is to have those leaf guards. I used to I have so many trees around my house. It was a nightmare. And I had one up at 3 stories up. And I think I told you before, I had a tree growing up there in the gutter just because I could never clean it out. So I no longer have those problems. I no longer have the water pouring over the side like I did before, which was made my garden really tough to grow and then destroyed my front door. So anyway, things are a lot better. That's, it's totally worth it, that maintenance. And those are the things as a homeowner, there's just little maintenance things that you need to do. And that's one of the expenses of owning your own home, or obviously, or a building if you're an office, for a business owner. So you just make sure those things are working properly, because they can cause all kinds of problems later on that are really expensive. So
we're getting into that time of year. I mean, April showers, we're knocking on the door.
You say that as I'm watching the snowfall right now, but I'm sure it's not too far away. We're getting there. All right. So they're going to, of course, sponsor the player that Michigan State needs to keep in the gutter. And we'll go through the starting lineup from Indiana. We'll begin with Connor Enright, 6'1" senior transfer from DePaul. He played for DeVries, obviously, a couple of years, played for DePaul, and then rejoined DeVries, averaging 4.5 points a game, leads the team in assists at 4.7 per game, shooting 40, 35, and 80. 4.5 to 1 assist to turnover ratio, so very, very good. He burned Michigan State for a couple. I don't know if he had 2 or 3 threes in that game, so he's capable of kind of going off and getting a couple. And I've seen some games where he goes 0 for 4, so he's just kind of a hit or miss guy.
Yeah, I mean, his shooting numbers on the year are pretty solid. 35% from 3. That's a guy you got to be concerned about, but the volume has not been there when you're only scoring 4.5 points a game, and that's. I think before the first meeting, he was at 4.4. So it's remained pretty steady, it would seem, over the course of the year. He's a nice, solid floor leader. Joyce, he's not making many mistakes. Decently creative. Can hit an occasional shot, but, defensively he's challenged, as most of these guys are. And he's not a guy you're going to expect to go out and give you double digits. So from an MSU perspective, one of the reasons that might be of some value is, Jeremy Fears is coming off 36 minutes, a lot of which he spent guarding Braden Smith. That's, this relates to what we were just talking about a few minutes ago about their travel and the quick turnaround and all that. I think if you're Michigan State, you start him for sure on Enright, because what you're hoping for, not that it's easy, but easier, a little less taxing than it was the other night. Yeah, probably so.
Yeah, and Enright's the kind of guy that honestly I think Denham Wojcik can hang with. If you're worried about minutes and sort of I think he can guard him okay, because I think Connor Enright, it's physically, I mean, that's what I remember that I took away most in that game in East Lansing. He just could not handle Jeremy Fears when he had the ball. I mean, he just couldn't do anything against Jeremy, and Jeremy's just stronger than him. It's just
in Indiana too. In addition to that, if you're talking about the Denham Wojcik minutes, what can be handled in terms of when he's out there, that's true. And it's also true that this Indiana team is not the same caliber of screening team as, say, Purdue.
Right.
Again, we come back to lack of physicality.
Yep. Next in the starters is Nick Dorn, tall guy, 6'7", 220-pound junior transfer from Elon, averaging 8.5 points a game on 41, 38, and 89 shooting. So he takes a majority of his shots, I mean, almost all of them, from 3. Wow, 141 of 158 shots. So it's only 17 2 attempts all season, which is why his 2-point percentage is about the same as his 3-point percentage.
Yeah, it reminds me of, drawing a blank. There was a guy at Iowa in the early stages of Fran's tenure before he really got it turned around. I wish I could remember his name. He was I know this much. He was a standard issue Fran 6'7" white guy wing.
Yeah.
1 year, and it was fairly late in the season, I think he had taken it was over 100 shots, and I think all but 2 had come from 3. So we're getting into that territory with Nick Dorn. He was not a starter the first time Michigan State faced IU, but he's been elevated to the lineup recently. I think he started 9 games on the season now, but they've come recently. That's his role is pretty obvious, right? The thing this guy does is shoot threes. I
Right.
will note his efficiency, that 38% number, it was 44% before the first meeting with MSU. So again, we see the difference of playing the impact rather of playing a Big Ten schedule.
Sure. Yeah. Then we have Lamar Wilkerson, a 6'6" senior transfer from Houston State. He's averaging 21 points a game, obviously tops for the team. He is their primary scorer. Clearly, he's shooting well, 46, 38, 89 this year. He also has a majority of his shots from outside. He was, I think, relatively well bottled up by Michigan State the first matchup, if I recall correctly.
But not quite as, I mean, it's over half are coming
Right.
from
It's
three,
not
but
like
he's not
extreme like Dorn. Yeah.
exactly. He's not like Dorn. And that is a difference. I will look, Wilkerson was believed to be, even though he was coming from a small school in Sam Houston State, he had played so well there that there was a lot of interest in him when he hit the portal. People believed he'd be able to make the transition. Indiana wrapped it up pretty quickly, and it's been proven to be one of the better additions out there, certainly in the conference. I would argue the country. He's one of the better wing scorers nationally. Now, he had a good game against Michigan State the first time. He had 19 points. He was 6 for 14 overall, 5 for 11 from three. So he was more three dependent against MSU than you normally see from him. The balance isn't usually quite that extreme for him, although it is over 50% on the season taken from beyond the arc. He didn't do much else. He had no rebounds, 1 assist, 2 turnovers, 2 steals. So it was basically just scoring. But
Yeah.
he was able to, have pretty much an average game for himself against MSU. So he's going to be a challenge. You would imagine it'll be mostly a combination of Cohen Carr and Jordan Scott, at least starting possessions on him. We know with MSU switching, it ends up being anybody in a given moment who could be guarding him. But those guys will get first crack. And the thing you like about that is their length. Obviously,
Yeah.
MSU
Right.
does have options where Wilkerson's not just going to be able to get shots over guys very easily. But he's a very, very good offensive player. Quick release, decently athletic. Yeah, he's the real thing.
Was Divine was he playing when they played Indiana the first time? I can't
Yes.
remember. Okay.
Yes.
That's what I thought. So yeah, be a little different defensively. Although now they've got Jordan, he'll have to deal with Jordan Scott more. So
Yeah, and Jordan, the thing you like about Jordan Scott as opposed to Divine or anybody else in that matchup is the length. I mean,
yeah,
Wilkerson's
absolutely.
6'6".
Yeah.
So if you got a 6'7" guy that you can counter him with, and it's the kind of matchup, I will say this, we've come back to this theme a lot recently. There's certain matchups where you worry a little bit more with Jordan Scott because if you have a physical guard, well, that can pose him some problems at this point in his development. That's something that's going to improve over the next off season, you would think.
Right. Right.
But it's not there now. Wilkerson, the one thing he does as a veteran, there's that element to it where he has an advantage. But the physical stuff, this is a good matchup, relatively speaking, for Jordan Scott.
Then we have Tucker DeVries, 6'7", 225-pound redshirt senior, son of the coach, obviously, Darren DeVries. He's a former Missouri Valley Freshman Player of the Year, a Missouri Valley Player of the Year the next year, averaging 13.6 points a game, 5.1 rebounds a game. He shoots 40, 34, and 86. And just watching him, we talked about this last time we did the preview. He's having a good season, but he's not sort of as impactful. It does not seem, I don't know. There's just something a little bit just off about his game this year, and I don't know what it is. I just is not quite as dominant as I guess I had anticipated that he might be in the Big Ten. Because I know, and this may be just a reflection of playing in the Missouri Valley for a while, where he was so dominant. And then he still, when Drake would play teams, high major teams, he still would have dominant performances. But I wonder if playing high major teams every night is sort of a different sort of animal than playing them just every once in a while. I don't know.
It might be. I mean, look, he's athletically, he's not great by Big Ten standards.
Right.
He's okay, but he's not a great athlete by Big Ten standards. But this is the part I don't understand with him is it's one thing if you look at a guy coming from the mid-major ranks, let's say, and you say, okay, he was able to get a lot of work done because you're not tested physically as much at that level. You move up to the high major levels we talk about all the time. And in this game, it's a factor. You're playing big boys when you're playing Michigan State or Purdue or Illinois or Michigan. If you don't have enough, physically, that could be a problem. Looking at Tucker DeVries, that shouldn't be an issue. He's put together.
Right.
I mean, he should not be having that problem. But I want to say we talked about this before the first meeting, and I definitely think it's still the case. I just don't see the motor that I expected.
Yep.
From him, right?
Yeah, it seems like a passion thing, which is
it's weird.
Sort of, yeah. Well,
especially coming off a year where you missed it, whatever West Virginia fans believe about the
the conspiracy that he wasn't really that injured.
Sitting out. But coming off a missed year, you would think, wow, turn it loose.
Yeah.
And it has just not happened. I look back at the first game, and he struggled. Wilkerson played well. He struggled. He had 9 points, only 2 rebounds, and he's their leading rebounder, so that's not good. 3 for 10 from the floor, 1 for 7 from 3. And to the point we've just been talking about, he was 2 for 2 at the line. He only attempted 2 free throws. You look at that guy, and to me, I would just from looking at him, would assume, that guy's going to play like a wrecking ball. He's going to try to get himself in the lane, just create contact. He did not do that the first time against Michigan State.
He did at Drake. I'll just tell you that. His game has changed a little bit. He's more like, I don't know if finesse is the right word, but the fadeaways and those sorts of things.
That's this team.
Different. Yeah.
That's this team. They are a finesse team, 100%.
And so finally in the middle, we have Sam Alexis, 6'9", 240-pound senior from Florida, averaging 8.2 points a game, second in rebounding at 4.5 a game, shooting 68 and 25 in very limited volume, and 75 from the line with a little over a block a game for rim protection.
He's the one guy on this team that I think brings something of a physical presence. But when you only got one guy, that's not enough. And he's a nice player, but I think what this season has demonstrated, sometimes you see guys who move from one program to another. Usually it would be high major to mid major or high major to high major, where maybe they played actually a good example of this is Mara at Michigan, right?
Right.
He was playing at UCLA, but it was a more limited role. And he got put in a much more significant role at Michigan, and he's thrived.
Yep.
That's not the case here. I think what this season has demonstrated is Florida had it right. Sam Alexis could be a really useful player if he's your third big man.
Right.
He's coming off the bench. He's giving you 20 minutes a night. Nice player to have. As if he's your best interior guy, I don't know that that's a great sign for your team because his numbers are fine, but they're not great.
Yeah. Moving on then to reserves for Indiana, we have Reed Bailey, 6'10" senior transfer from Davidson. He started the season earlier, and now he's coming off the bench. He's playing 20 minutes a game, so a decent amount of time. He's averaging about the same as Alexis, 8.5, almost 9 points a game, 3.5 rebounds a game, shooting 57, 25, and 77.
Yeah, this is a guy, and they knew this coming in. A finesse center is the way you describe it. And all his counting numbers have declined once they hit Big Ten play for keeps. Again, not a surprise because you're playing in a league where you're dealing with a lot of big people.
Right.
Physicality is going to start to impact you. I just don't think he's been able to handle it well. But, it was for whatever reason, Darian DeVries went about building this team in a certain way. If you're an Indiana fan, I think you're hoping it was all he really felt he could do given the time constraints. Because if this is the plan, it ain't going to work.
Right. Yeah, and you're kind of seeing a trend here when I go through the 3-point shooting. He's 25%. Our next player is Tatum Connerway, 6'3" senior transfer from Troy, averaging 10.3 points a game, shooting 56, 28, and 74. Also about 4 assists per game, two turnovers a game.
Yeah, and he's a good player. He's been replaced by Dorn in the starting lineup, but he still plays a lot.
Right.
He's truly, he and Bailey are the 6th and 7th men, however you want to divide that. But I think the problem here, he's done a lot of good things for them, but the problem is, on this team at least, if you're shooting 28% from 3 as a guard, that's probably not ideal. Now, the fact that he's able to shoot 56% overall tells you, unlike many of his teammates, he's proven to be a little more judicious about his shot selection. But yeah, I mean, nice player to have. But again, defense, not a strong suit. There's some flaws here, although he has done some good things for them.
Then we have Trent Sisley, 6'8", 225-pound freshman. So those listeners of the show will recall that name, as Michigan State was recruiting him for a while. He's averaging 4.4 points a game, 2.9 rebounds a game, plays about 14 minutes a game, shooting 43, 28, and 54.
Yeah, but his role has really shrunk.
Yeah.
When we were looking back at the notes from the first game, so this is like early mid-January, so about a month and a half ago, he was averaging 19 minutes a game. He's down to 14. He's on a string, I don't know how many, but it's at least 4 or 5 straight with single-digit minutes. I liked him as a recruit, and I still like him in terms of his future, but I do wonder what's going on there, because that's a pretty precipitous drop. And the thing I liked most about him is I thought he was one guy on that team who actually was capable of playing with physicality. I know I'm overusing that word, but it just comes up with his team. And so to reduce his role, I don't pay close enough attention to Indiana to know what's going on there. Obviously, his 3-point shooting has not been great, and they did think he was a stretch guy.
Yeah.
But that's also not unusual for freshmen to go through that. So I still think he's got a shot to be a good player, but this season has definitely gone into reverse for him since the first time we saw Indiana.
And finally, a guy who's really struggled with his shot is Josiah Miles, 6'6" junior transfer from North Florida. He's averaging 1.6 points a game, 1.7 rebounds a game, plays about 9 minutes, and he's shooting 33, 25, and 40.
Yeah, and the flip side of Trent, Miles wasn't firmly in the rotation for Indiana. He was playing most every game, but garbage minutes.
Right.
Well, he's playing a little more now, but as you say, the productivity has been limited.
All right, so I think it's pretty obvious, but who do you have as a Michigan State player they need to keep in the gutter for Indiana?
Yeah, it's Lamar Wilkerson. It's not
same as last game.
Right.
Yeah.
Not a close call. He's been really, really good as an offensive player. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah. And I still tell you, I'm surprised that it's him and not DeVries. Before the season started, I thought DeVries would be far more dynamic.
Yeah, I probably would have leaned.
Difficult.
I mean, I thought Wilkerson would be good because of the buildup around him.
Yeah, right.
Seemed to be, but I'm with you. I'd have to go back and listen to our season preview, but I'm going to guess that I probably emphasized DeVries more than anybody.
Yeah, I was definitely a believer in him. All right, so I'm also a believer in the Squeegee Squad of Grand Rapids. They can do fantastic work cleaning your windows, whether it's a business or home. They'll also come out and power wash, which you probably have some grime from the winter from all the snow melt and all the stuff that's going on. So they can come out probably now, start to get him on the schedule. You can go over to our support page at thefinalfoursontheschedule.com/support to get a hold of Troy and his team. They can come out and get a hold of you and take care of that, whatever it is you need done with your windows, interior, exterior, whatever it might be, your home or business. And they have a very large region, as I always say. So contact them first. The great thing is you get 15% off simply by mentioning Final Four when you get your estimate. And the Swedish Squad sponsors the Who Cleans the Glass Best contest. Right now, Rod is up 14-11 with 3 to go. So I have to win 3 in a row to tie. And
I gotta tell you before we
oh,
make our picks,
okay.
I'm finding myself getting way too many suggestions for how we ought to play this out.
Oh,
And
you're still up 3. I think it's a little early to start worrying about tiebreakers. I guess is my
well, here's the thing though. You're right. But I was talking to our friend Jack Ebling, and he suggested, well, I got an idea for what you should do. I mean, what do we do in the game itself when it's tied at the end of regulation? Meaning, oh, maybe
oh.
we do it for the first Big Ten tournament game. And I said, and I should feel ashamed of myself for saying this. I said, listen, I consider myself the Dusty May of this competition. I didn't write the rules up, but the rules seem to be what they are. And I am in a position where I might not win, but I can't lose. And so I'm anything to preserve that is what I'm interested in. And that's the argument I'm going to make. I can't lose. That's off the table now.
I was thinking about this and I thought the only fair way to do this. Now, I still have to win 3 in a row, which I think is pretty unlikely at this point, although we've had heaters where you and I go on runs. If that were to occur, I think we just look at overall rebounds for the season with our picks, and whoever has picked the most would win. And that is going to be a nightmare to try and figure out. Maybe
I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. It wasn't look, the season started. I didn't hear anything about that.
Because we didn't think we were going to have a tie.
Close. I know there actually technically is a rule about tampering, but anybody enforcing the rule? No. Okay. I mean, supposedly Michigan's already got a 7'3" guy from St. Mary's lined up for next year. We're still in February.
Yeah.
But that's what they did last year. They were talking to Yaks in February, supposedly Morris Johnson earlier than that. So I am Dusty May, at least when it comes to this. There's nothing suggesting any of those things. I refuse to take a hit on this thing. I have done enough to earn my right to not have to suck some helium. And that's how it's going to be. Now, right. I can make it all moot by winning any of these next 3 or even tying them. So hopefully I'm going to get the result that eliminates this as a talking point, because I truthfully do not want to have to listen to people on –
it's just going to get worse as it gets closer.
You ducked it. You needed to go to a tiebreaker. No, absolutely not.
All right. So I think I get to pick first this game, and I'm going with Cooper as my first pick because he's just been more consistent. Wow. So I'm like, here you go. Here you go. We can maybe end it right now. So I'm going to go with Cooper.
It might work. I mean, recently that's not been a bad play.
That's why I'm like, I'm going to go off the board here.
All right, you going with Cooper. I'm going to obviously take Jax. And I'm going to take Cohen Carr.
Right, surprise. and I'll take Ward. So we're going to kind of change the combos here a little bit.
Shaking it up. First time this year, right?
I think so.
And I would guess it's the first time in what? Probably since last November.
Maybe.
I'm going to guess that we picked anybody other than Jax.
I think he was
he staked out the position as their best rebounder pretty early on last year.
Yeah. No,
I can believe it happened a few times early last season, but I'm going to assume it's been 15 months since anybody else got picked first.
I think so. I mean, I feel like I think Sapala was on there for a little bit early in the season, I think.
Right. Right.
So, all right. So we'll move on, of course, to Nudge Printing, where you can get great stuff. This is obviously not Nudge Printing this hoodie I'm wearing, but usually do have all kinds of Nudge Printing stuff. I got my hoodie for tomorrow for the Indiana game. But they have Gabe and his team are sponsoring the I don't know, you call it the Primal Scream from Jaxon Kohler. You can go over to their collection there and at nudgeprinting.com. And of course, you can go to nudgeprinting.com/win, where you can enter the drawing, which we don't have a drawing. I know I said we'd have it, but it's not yet March 1st. So I guess you have until midnight tonight, if you're listening to this on Saturday, in order to enter the drawing for the $120 quarter zip Sparty basketball. So again, that's nudgeprinting.com/win. While you're there, you can also get any sort of find our stuff, our gear, hoodies and t-shirts and stickers and things like that. And then of course, just hop on over to Nudge's main page where you can get all the different assortment of things. And again, spring is coming. It's time to get the stuff that doesn't have the long sleeves, the hoods on it. You get some caps, get some golf shirts, things like that. All super high quality, all kinds of different logos, and vintage Sparties, whatever you might be, gruff Sparties. You get that 20% off, of course, if you type in TIFNOTS, that's TFFINOTS at checkout. So do it today. You'll be very glad you did. And they sponsor the 5 keys of the game. The first key of the game is physicality, which I know you've mentioned that a couple times this show.
Yeah. Like 19, 25. Look, I've said this since early in the season. You have a couple teams in this conference, Indiana and Iowa, that I think are basically running mid-major lineups out there in a high major league.
Yeah.
Now that's a little bit, I don't mean it to be quite, it's not 100% a negative in the sense that they both got good players. I mean, Iowa has Sturts, Indiana has Wilkerson, they got DeVries. They've got some guys that obviously can play.
Right.
And we see all the time in the NCAA tournament, mid-majors can rise up in a one-game scenario and beat a high major. Happens all the time. But over the course of a season in a high major league, it is really, really hard to win big. You can win games, but to win big, to be in that upper tier of the conference, I think you'd have to have some remarkable things going on to compete at that level with the kind of rosters that those two schools have. And I think it shows up in many, many different ways. And it's why I think that Michigan State in particular is about as bad a matchup for Indiana as there can be in this league. Doesn't mean Indiana can't win, but it's just going in, you look at it, and this is not ideal at all for what Indiana would like to be looking at, because Michigan State has obviously multiple guys who bring the wood physically. Even their perimeter guys are physical in terms of how they play. And they're going to try to get them, I certainly hope, at least. And we're going to talk about this in a minute. They're going to try to be aggressive in getting the ball into the paint, either via the dribble or via post-ups. That's what they're going to look to do. So Indiana's, I think, going to be tested in terms of their rebounding, obviously, being able to limit second shots, tall order. I'll look at the first game. Yeah, Michigan State had if my math is right, had a 50% offensive rebounding rate in the first game.
I think it's probably right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So that's a problem for Indiana. And then, of course, as we talked about, the fact that Indiana is forced to foul a lot. Now, they didn't go crazy in the first game. Michigan State got 24 free throw attempts. That's good. It's not an insane amount. But it's interesting. 24 free throw attempts on 21 total fouls. I guess that adds up. So those are the two areas, limiting second shots and defending without fouling, that I think Michigan State in particular poses real challenges for this Indiana team. And then at the other end, Indiana plays a finesse offensive game.
Right.
Which, if they're hitting shots, can be okay. And on any given day, that might happen. But, just the matchup is not a good one for Indiana.
Second key to the game is guarding the arc. And so, to your point, this is a team that kind of has one probable path to victory and is hitting threes.
Yeah, it's their best chance, given how they play and their personnel. Their best chance for a win is that they have a good day from three, which is not impossible at all. So that's what worries you on the Michigan State side, is that, boy, they're at home. Their backs are against the wall to some extent with a tournament bid on the line. They beat Michigan State. That might be enough. That might be enough in and of itself to get them in. They probably wouldn't feel totally comfortable, but it would sure help.
Oh, yeah. They need one for sure. A quad one opportunity.
Well, they definitely need one. I'm saying if the only one they get is Michigan State, that might be enough.
Oh yeah, I think it's a
Um,
quad 1A win if they
yeah,
get that. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
So Indiana is going to be, you would assume, motivated
Yeah.
in this game. But for Michigan State, look, coming in, this is what they do. So you got to be cognizant of that. I think you want to limit, it's simple to say, harder to do. You want to limit the number of clean looks that they get. Wilkerson obviously is the major threat. I mean, he took 11 of them in the first game. That's a lot. And DeVries took 7. So between those two guys, 18 threes.
Yeah.
It's a lot of shots. But Wilkerson in particular is the guy you're worried about. And I think as long as Michigan State can make them even semi inefficient, they don't have to shut them down. But if they can, hold them to the low 30s, let's say, great chance of winning.
Well, that kind of leads right into the next key of the game, which is a transition game. And the threes lead to long rebounds and breakout opportunities. We saw that. I think that saw that a lot in the game against Indiana, if I recall, in East Lansing.
Well, and MSU had a very productive day in the first media transition. They had 25-12 advantage.
Yeah, I think it was largely because of that. I think lots of long rebounds.
Probably, yeah. Because I mean, looking at the stats,
I don't think there are a lot of turnovers.
Indiana did have 14 turnovers.
Okay, so probably a combination of both.
Yeah, that's a little high, but 25-12 in fast break points. If that happens again, that's a huge problem for Indiana. Right. Obviously, they're going to try to do some things to limit that, but going to your point, when you take threes the way they do, you might be limited in terms of how much you can prevent that, right? Because you're going to take those shots. And if they're missing and they're kicking out, well, you're kind of choosing to live with that.
Yep. Fourth key to the game is Jax. And I mean, obviously this refers to, I feel the one nice thing I feel like every time someone makes this list as a key to the game, they tend to respond. I mean, they're not listening to the show, obviously, but let's hope that's the case
here. It works out that way. Yeah.
Except his rebounding. Cooper can get those rebounds.
It's not that Jax has been awful.
No.
I mean, and his effort is never questioned, but I think for MSU, this is an obvious statement. Anybody who's watched this team would, think it's pretty elementary point, but I think it does need to be made. For MSU to be the best version of itself going into March, they need Jax to get back closer to the guy he was, say, prior to the West Coast trip. Because I think that's really where it shifted for him. The threes started to not fall at the same clip.
Yep.
He's had, up until that point, I mean, it was double machine, right?
Yep.
And he's had more games like the last one where he doesn't really show up the same way on the glass. And MSU needs that to change if they're going to be the best version of themselves. So I think he is a critically important player for a lot of reasons. One, obvious one, he gives you that stretch element and at least forces defenses to play a little more honestly than they do, say, when Cam Ward and Carson Cooper are out there together. He's a different kind of player. And particularly when you take into account that Michigan State has some perimeter players that aren't necessarily guarded on the arc, like Cohen Carr, you really do need Jax to give them more from three than what they've been getting lately. And as we say, showing up with a little more regularity on the glass would be welcome too. I just think they need that best version of Jax.
And the fifth and final key to the game is offensive aggression. And this obviously usually refers to Michigan State getting in the lane, scoring twos. And I worry sometimes a little bit. I don't remember how much Indiana plays zone, but they're going to have to figure out. And maybe Cooper's now more of a solution at the free throw line, sort of figure out that
both those
zone
guys,
attack. I mean, Kohler obviously.
Both he and Jax. Yeah. Absolutely. And what was it, the Ohio State game, right, where they had a lot of problems.
Yeah.
With the zone. And they really started to solve it when Jax was able to play in the second half.
Right.
Made things flow a lot more smoothly. Yeah, we may see some zone from IU. That wouldn't be surprising. But look, I think that an aggressive offensive Michigan State, the one that played against Purdue, that game plan, that will work.
Yeah.
in this game if you play a similar fashion. You don't allow yourself to get seduced into taking a lot of jump shots. You look, or at least, the occasional mid range or 5-foot jumper is okay, but staying focused on that, on exploiting the lack of size, the lack of strength that this team has on the interior, it should produce buckets and it should produce fouls, both of which would be welcome sights.
All right. And so I think we'll probably wrap it up there. It's gone kind of long here. I was just going to check one last time as we've been talking to see if we have any, don't have any odds for Michigan State game, at least in Fanduel yet. So encourage everyone to go to our support page. You can find ways to support the show. You can also get a hold of any of our sponsors, other kind of cool offers that are on there as well. And so we'll be back live after the Indiana game tomorrow afternoon or evening, I guess. So until next time, the Final Four is not on the schedule. Go green.